In the mid-1990s, four college friends, Evan, Malik, Rena, and Tara all lived in the same old, slightly run-down apartment complex in a small town called Raven Oaks, Colorado. Now, this was back when life was a bit simpler, before everyone was glued to a cell phone. Evan and Malik shared one apartment, while Rena and Tara lived just a few doors down the hall. They were inseparable, spending most of their free time together, navigating college life and cheap pizza nights. One particular weekend, the whole group was hanging out at the girls' apartment. They were in high spirits, laughing, blasting music from a CD player, and getting ready to head out for dinner. The plan was to drive to this classic diner on the edge of town they all loved. As they were about to leave, Malik, feeling a bit of a chill, decided he needed a jacket. He walked over to a tall, narrow closet in the hallway, one of those built-in types you see in older buildings. He opened the door, a little stiff from disuse, and reached up to the top shelf. That's when his fingers brushed against something solid and wooden, covered in a thick layer of dust. He pulled it down, curiosity getting the better of him. It was an old Ouija board. It looked ancient, the wood dark and faded, the letters and symbols worn from what looked like years of use. He held it up. Rena and Tara, who had lived in that apartment for months, stared at it, completely bewildered. They swore up and down it wasn't theirs. They'd never even looked on that top shelf. It was too high to reach without a chair. Evan and Malik knew they hadn't brought it over. It was a genuine mystery. Where had it come from? Their dinner plans were momentarily forgotten. Intrigued and maybe a little spooked, they decided to give it a try. I mean, what's the harm, right? They cleared off the coffee table, wiped the dust off the board, and sat down on the floor around it. Everyone placed their fingertips lightly on the planchette, the little heart-shaped pointer. At first, they just asked silly, typical questions. Who has a secret crush? Will I pass my finals? The planchette moved, spelling out vague, nonsensical answers. They giggled, each one accusing the others of pushing it. It was all fun and games, a classic college night diversion. But then the tone started to shift. The answers became more coherent, more direct. It felt less like they were pushing the planchette, and more like it was guiding their hands. The spirit, or whatever it was they were communicating with, seemed different. It wasn't menacing or aggressive. In fact, it was strangely polite, almost lonely. It answered their questions patiently. When they asked its name, it spelled out Zio, a name that didn't mean anything to them at the time, but has since become notorious in paranormal circles. It claimed to be a spirit that was just passing through. The friends, a mix of skeptical and unnerved, kept the questions coming. The air in the room grew a little heavier, the earlier laughter replaced by a hushed, focused silence. Finally, Evan glanced at his watch. It was getting late, and their stomachs were rumbling. He broke the spell, announcing, "All right, guys, this has been weird, but we've got to go get some dinner before the diner closes." As they lifted their hands from the planchette, Evan, as a sort of final goodbye, said to the board, "We're leaving now." They all watched, their eyes wide as the planchette slowly, deliberately, slid across the board. It spelled out two words, D-O-N-T-G-O. A chill ran through the group. Don't go, that was. Specific and creepy. They tried to laugh it off, attributing it to someone's subconscious prank. Okay, very funny, who did that? Evan asked, but nobody confessed. Everyone swore they hadn't moved it. The mood was officially broken. The fun had evaporated, replaced by a genuine sense of unease. They decided they had enough. Malik stood up, took the board, and placed it right back where he found it, on the highest shelf in the hallway closet. He made sure to push it all the way to the back, then firmly closed the closet door. Wanting to get out of the apartment, they quickly heard it out. Tara, the last one out, carefully locked the deadbolt. Everyone watched her do it. There was an unspoken agreement. They were all witnesses. Nobody had a key except her and Rena. Nobody split up. Nobody lagged behind. And again, this was the 90s. No cell phones. No way to text someone to sneak back. They were all together, a tight-knit group, heading for the exit. They walked down the stairs, their earlier chatter now replaced with a nervous quiet, and piled into Evan's car. The 30-minute drive to the diner on the outskirts of Raven Oaks was just what they needed. The bright lights, the smell of burgers and fries, the background noise of other people, it all helped to bring them back to reality. They talked, they ate, they started to feel normal again. The weirdness with the Ouija board began to feel like a silly, self-induced spook story. Hours passed. They finished their meal, paid the bill, and headed back, the mood completely restored. They were loud and laughing again as they drove back to the apartment complex, teasing each other and talking about their plans for the rest of the weekend. They climbed the stairs to their floor, the conversation flowing easily. But they decided to call it a night at Evan's place instead of going back to the girls'. Evan led the way to his door, which was just down the hall. He fumbled for his keys, stuck one in the lock, and turned it. He pushed the door open, stepping aside to let everyone in. The group started to file into the apartment, and then, one by one, they stopped dead in their tracks. Every single one of them froze, their laughter caught in their throats. Lying directly on the floor, right inside the doorway, impossible to miss, was the Ouija board. It was the same dark, worn, ancient wooden board from the girls' closet. And resting perfectly in the dead center of it, on the glass of the planchette, was a single chilling word. I know. Silence. A thick, heavy, absolute silence fell over them. Their minds raced, trying to make sense of the impossible. Evan's apartment had been locked. Tara had the only key to her apartment, and she'd been with them the entire time. No one could have gotten into the girls' place to get the board. No one could have gotten into Evan's place to leave it there. They had never been out of each other's sight for the entire night. There was no rational explanation. No prank could account for this. The silence was shattered by Rena. She let out a piercing scream that echoed down the empty hallway. Tara, standing next to her, just started sobbing, her body shaking. The sight of the board, the blatant impossibility of it, was too much. Evan, shaking off his own shock, went into protection mode. Everybody out, now. He commanded, his voice tight with fear and urgency. He physically ushered his friends back out into the hallway, away from the object on the floor. He didn't want to touch it, didn't want to be near it. They scrambled back down the stairs and out into the cool night air of the parking lot. Without another word, they knew what they had to do. They gathered twigs, old newspapers, and whatever flammable material they could find and built a small fire. Evan, stewing himself, ran back upstairs, grabbed the board and planchette, and brought them down. They threw it into the flames. They stood there in a circle, watching the wood blacken, curl, and burn, until the board and its message were nothing but ash. They never spoke of it again, not really. It was too strange, too terrifying to revisit. The friendship, once so tight, became strained. The shared trauma was a wedge they couldn't overcome. Soon after, they all moved out of the Raven Oaks apartment complex, and eventually they drifted apart. It's been decades since that night. Evan is now a middle-aged man with a family of his own, but he says that some fears never really leave you. To this day, every single time he unlocks a door, especially when he's alone at night, he feels a moment of pure, cold hesitation. He pauses, his hand on the doorknob, braced for what he might find on the other side. He's afraid that one day, he'll push the door open and see something waiting for him on the floor. A reminder of that night, and of the thing that seemingly followed them home. Thank you for watching. If you have a story that defies explanation, share it with us in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more unsettling true stories.